So at the start of these playoffs, I have to admit, I was completely off. I said the 6th seed Golden State Warriors and the number 1 seed Milwaukee Bucks would be in the NBA Finals. I said that from the beginning of the year, and since they were at where they were, the playoffs, I said they would be in the NBA Finals again. Well, Milwaukee went out in the first round as the number 1 seed. There's only two number 1 seeds since that time has ever lost in the first round. And the Golden State Warriors, I thought, okay, I might have a chance with them. And then they lose to the Los Angeles Lakers. But I would have never imagined this kind of finals. I can see why the West was how it was, because that's a dominant team. I never saw the East coming. I have to admit, I'm very excited for this NBA Finals instead of what we would have as the alternate ending had the other two teams won, which would have been a Celtics versus Lakers Finals. I've seen that before. I've never seen this before. So this is the NBA Finals prediction between the Miami Heat and the Denver Nuggets. So welcome back to the Game Day Hour. My name is Aaron, and this is my NBA Finals prediction. So in this video is a little bit different from the fantasy football team review. Obviously, I'm not going to go on a whole tangent about every aspect of the team. I'm only going to tell you the history of how these teams got here, and then I'm going to predict who wins it all in the end. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this video.
The Miami Heat, Eastern Conference champions. 7th finals appearance.
Both these teams' journey started back in the NBA bubble that happened in 2020. So let's start with the Miami Heat. Miami in 2020 acquired Jimmy Butler onto their team after he was with the Sixers, and then prior to that the T-Wolves, and then the Bulls. And ever since then, Miami has always been in the playoffs. Miami has always been a top dog in the race. That year they ended as the 5th seed. And throughout the entire playoffs, it was held in Orlando, the NBA bubble, due to COVID-19. And Miami first swept Indiana, the 4th seed. Then Miami afterwards beat Milwaukee with the two-time MVP, Giannis, 4-1. And of course, Giannis didn't play that entire series, which is another running theme in this playoffs. And then afterwards, Miami beat Boston until they ended up losing to the Los Angeles Lakers in the bubble. Ever since then, Miami finished as the 6th seed. They lost in the first round to Milwaukee, who would go on to win the NBA Finals in 2021. And then in 2022, they finished as the number 1 seed, but lost in the Eastern Conference Finals in 7 games to Boston, who would go on to lose the NBA Finals to the Golden State Warriors. Now, Miami had one of the more improbable and historical runs of all time. This year, entering the playoffs, they lost their first play-in game and ended up having to play for the 8th seed, which they ended up winning against Chicago to be the 8th seed, and they would play against Milwaukee. Now, there's only been 2 times in NBA history that the 8th seed has ever upsetted the number 1 seed. That was when the Nuggets did it to the Supersonics in the 80s, and when the Warriors did it to the Mavericks in 2007. This is the 3rd time in history where a team who's the 8th seed ended up beating the number 1 seed team, who was projected to go to the finals, who I thought was going to the finals. I thought Milwaukee was going, but it ended up being the opposite way. Miami won that series 4-1. And so they ended up playing the New York Knicks afterwards. They ended up winning that series 4-2, and the Knicks were healthy nearly the entire time, so Miami just outplayed them. And then in this series, they were up 3-0 against the number 2 seed Celtics. And then the Celtics, they fought their way back and took it to a game 7. But then the first play of that game, Jason Tatum turned his ankle and was not 100%. And Miami took advantage, never got close for Boston. Boston never saw the lead after Miami took it by the end of the first. And now the Miami Heat are back in the NBA Finals. Their team, the players that I would be a little more concerned about are Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, and a newcomer, Caleb Martin, who was playing out of his mind in this Eastern Conference Finals. And they are missing Tyler Hero, one of their best shooters, However, you have Duncan Robinson coming off the bench. You have Kevin Love, who's supposed to get back to being healthy and playing in this entire series. And I do want to say Hero might come back in Game 3. That's where he's projected to come back. You also have Gabe Vincent and Max Strus, who can turn it on from 3 at any time. So Miami has a pretty loaded, I wouldn't say deep roster, but loaded. So to people who are saying that the NBA bubble was not legit, well, first and foremost, both conference finals this year were the same as the NBA bubble. So the NBA bubble was legit. And Miami, well, they're back.
The Denver Nuggets, Western Conference champions. First finals appearance.
Going back to that same bubble, we're going to talk about the Denver Nuggets. The Nuggets were down 3-1 to the Utah Jazz in the first round of the playoffs. Then here comes Jamal Murray. Jamal Murray, at this point, great player, but wasn't a standout star. Not until this 2020 playoffs, but multiple times in that series against Utah in their comeback, he would average above 40 points, which insane. Denver ended up winning that series and coming back from 3-1. Now, not many teams have ever came back from 3-1. The most memorable, of course, the 2016 finals. But then they find themselves down 3-1 again to the Los Angeles Clippers, and this is a team ran by Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. And what ends up happening? They come back from 3-1 again. Until they were down 3-1 to the Los Angeles Lakers, and, well, that was that. The Lakers ended up winning that series 4-1 and ended up winning the NBA Finals. Then in comes the next 2 seasons. Nikola Jokic, their starting center, star center, won MVP 2 times, both back-to-back. First it was Giannis back-to-back, and then it was Jokic back-to-back. But both times Jamal Murray was out. And when it came to playoff time, the Denver Nuggets in their first playoff series, but the Denver Nuggets in their first playoff run ended up going out in the second round in a sweep to the Phoenix Suns, who would go on to play in the NBA Finals, which they would end up losing. As for the next year, Denver would go out in the first round as the 6th seed against the Golden State Warriors, who would go on to win the NBA Finals. And now, after many years of being a franchise and not seeing an NBA Finals appearance, the Nuggets first bulldoze through Minnesota 4-1, and then do the same thing to Phoenix, and in an elimination game, at one point we're up by 30 against Phoenix, and then they absolutely sweep the LeBron-led Lakers 4-0 to make it to the NBA Finals. Which now leads us to here. As a full, healthy Nuggets team, they were actually the better team for the most part of the NBA season, especially in the Western Conference, a conference that's generally very loaded. And this team, this starting 5 for Denver, is the most consistent in the playoffs. They played every single playoff series together. That is Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon, and KCP. So they have a lot more chemistry together, I would say, than any other team in the playoffs because they played the most together. But the same thing with Miami. Their bench doesn't run very deep. It's mostly that starting 5 for the entirety of the postseason.
Who will win the NBA Finals?
Which now leads me to my finals prediction. So going into this, I thought it was going to be Miami and Denver once the conference championship started. When Denver was up 3-0 and Miami was up 3-0, I was like, okay, I'm going to cut it right there. I couldn't do this video because though Denver swept, Miami almost had an anti-sweep against them. They lost 3 in a row after winning 3 in a row. So I had to wait all these days to try to figure out who was going to actually play against Denver in the finals. But now that Miami's finally taken it, my pick is back on schedule. Going into this, I thought Miami was going to win the finals. When they went up 3-0 and Denver went up 3-0, I was like, this Miami team's too resilient. And Denver has been playing every series as the home favorites every single time. But looking back, when Miami started to struggle against Boston, I said to myself, they can't do this against Denver. They can't get this big lead against Denver and then squander it. At some point, Denver is going to be too much. Which leads me to each game. So I'm going to have my finger up like this, and I'm going to point for each game. So on this side is Denver, on that side is Miami, as you guys can see on screen. So game 1, I choose Miami. In game 2, I choose Denver. So split 1-1, goes back to Miami. Game 3, I choose Denver. In game 4, I choose Miami. So another split. Game 5, normally Denver is incredible at home. I already said they're going to lose 1 at home. They're going to lose 2 at home, in my opinion. Game 6, though, Denver takes it in Miami, which leads to game 7. I already said I don't trust Miami after they almost squandered that 3-0 lead. So, of course, game 7, I choose Denver. And another reason why I chose Denver is because of a historical pattern that I noticed. There have been 2 back-to-back MVPs in the last 5 years. Jokic did it twice, but before that was Giannis. In Giannis' first time winning MVP was 2019. He ended up losing in the Eastern Conference Finals to Toronto, who would end up winning the NBA Finals that year. 2020 is the bubble season. He ended up winning MVP again. He would go out in the second round to the Miami Heat, who would end up losing in the NBA Finals. The third year, he did not win MVP, and Giannis ended up taking his Bucks team to the NBA Finals, where they ended up beating the Phoenix Suns. Now, here's the pattern. 2021 was Jokic's first year, so the year Giannis won was the year Jokic won MVP. That year, Jokic's team made it to the second round, where they would end up losing to the Phoenix Suns, who would go on to play in the NBA Finals, where they would lose to the Milwaukee Bucks. The next year is 2022, they would lose to the Golden State Warriors in the first round, who would end up going to the NBA Finals to win it all. So, is it ironic that in the year that Jokic doesn't win MVP, that his team is in the NBA Finals? It's happening again. Giannis had that 3-year loop. 2 MVPs, Finals appearance, Finals MVP. Jokic is at 2 MVPs, he's at a Finals appearance, doesn't have that MVP yet. But because of that history and what I saw Miami almost do against Boston, I don't trust Miami that much. I think this will go to 7 games. But at the end of the day, I do see the Denver Nuggets winning the NBA Finals. I think that it's going to be too much of an offensive powerhouse for Miami to stop, because Miami has a short lineup comparatively to Denver. Denver's going to win the rebound game. Their 3 tallest players play in their starting lineup. That's Jokic, Gordon, and Michael Porter. So who's going to out-rebound them? Bam? Bam is not as tall as Jokic, and he's just the same length as Aaron Gordon. So how are they going to win the rebound game? Miami needs to play a bigger ball team. They need to have Kevin Love in the starting lineup. If they run this small ball, I think they will lose. Because I think Denver is also very disciplined on defense. They don't really give you fast breaks. You're not going to get many fast breaks out of Denver. And while Miami is a good team when it comes to the steal category, thanks to Jimmy Butler, how many opportunities are you going to get with a disciplined offense, especially with a center that passes the ball just as good as any point guard in the league? I just don't think Miami has the rotation, both in their lineups and on offense and defense, that is going to be enough to handle Denver. So I see Denver winning their first NBA Finals, and Jokic will be like Giannis, getting himself a Finals MVP and a Finals trophy. So that's where I have it. I have the Denver Nuggets as your NBA Finals champions. And that'll do it for today's episode. If you notice, I'm on camera. This is not a face reveal. I've been on a channel before. It's called TFDR if you want to go look it up. I used to do video game stuff. It was a weird channel. If you want to go see it, go ahead. I'll probably leave a link to it. I don't normally get on camera, and that's mostly because, one, I barely look at the camera. I'm looking here, there. I'm looking at whatever this thing, and that's the microphone. This is going to be a work in progress. There's some times where you'll see me on camera, and there will be many times where you don't. and you'll know the type of videos when you see me, if it's a sit down talk versus if it's like an actual series like the fantasy football team series. But I was on camera, NBA Finals predictions. I recommend that since this video is coming out today on a Tuesday, the NBA Finals starts tomorrow on a Wednesday, June 1st. Go watch it, 7:30 p.m. my time, which is Central Time. For you guys, probably 8:30 Eastern Time or 5:30 Pacific Time, maybe even 6:30 Mountain Time if you're down in Denver going to celebrate. Go watch the finals. It'll be very fun. It's going to be a new type of finals look. People want the same old because it has bigger names, but then those same people will argue that there's not enough variety. So enjoy this while it lasts. If you enjoyed the 2021 NBA Finals between Phoenix and Milwaukee, you should enjoy this one between Miami and Denver. So have a good time watching this. Root for whoever you're going to root for. Leave, if you want to comment, leave down below who you think is going to win. And lastly, I want to talk about the fantasy football team series. It's going to continue, hopefully starting again Thursday with the Green Bay Packers, and then the rest of the NFC North. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, please leave a like, comment down below, and subscribe. Tap the bell icon, and so you can keep getting notifications when my videos come up. Anyways, I will see you guys in the next one. So have a great day. Take care.